Hey, what's up everybody, it's Danny aka Danny Portraits, and today I'm showing you how you can enhance your photos using Lightroom only. Since most of you guys are overwhelmed with all the tools in Photoshop, I'm showing you how you can enhance your photos using Lightroom only without jumping into Photoshop. So I just chose some photos here in Lightroom, which you can actually download in the description below and follow my steps. So let's jump right into Lightroom and see what we can do. So I actually chose 6 random photos. Maybe we are not going to edit all of them, but I'm showing you how you can edit those photos, making them stand out without any hassle. So I'm gonna reset everything or every photo and see what editing steps we can do to enhance the photos. And I'm not talking about just raw adjustments. I'm going to edit a full photo just using Lightroom, also color grading and stuff. So let's start with this one from my friend here, from my guy Christoph. Follow him on Instagram if you aren't. So I'm gonna hide this panel here for now. Also hiding this panel, we don't need any presets right now, only using this right panel here to enhance the photo. First of all, I want to do color correction, so that means I'm gonna correct the photo how it looked like in real life. So I'm not gonna do any artistic changes right now. I'm just gonna bring it back to where it should be, because this is a raw and raw files are pretty flat, as you might know. I usually start out with the temperature if the image is not too dark or so. This is a pretty good lit photo, I would say. I think nothing is clipped actually. You can check those 2 arrows here to see if anything is clipped. So you can use these arrows here. So let's see if I only mark or enable this highlight clipper here, if I enhance the exposure, I see those clipping spots here which are red. So that means your image is overexposed there and you're losing details. Also same with the shadows. If you go too dark, you start losing details here in the shadows, as you can see down here. And yeah, you recovered all the highlights back here, as you can see. So just make sure you shoot your photos in the right exposure and not overexposed or underexposed. Oh my god, you see this? This is actually the sun shining through the window, so I'm gonna change the position of the camera real quick. I cannot close this any further, unfortunately, so I have to move the camera. Alright, I hope the sun is not hitting the lens anymore. So let's start with our edit. I usually would go and just adjust the temperature slider until the skin tones are pretty much okay and the whites are white. Another method to do that is to take this white balance selector and select any white color in the image, which should be white. So his t-shirt should be white, but it's not really white because it's kind of dirty or so. So let's undo this and maybe pick some snow here in the background. And as you can see, it gives me a little of green tint, which I don't really like. So I'm gonna adjust it manually here. Still too much green tint, so I'm gonna leave it like that, maybe around 9. And next thing I would do is bring the highlights down so I can actually reveal all the mountains here in the background. So you can see we play with the highlights here. The highlights are going to the left side. You can also bring down the exposure if you want to bring in some more details back here. Then bring up the shadows because he went a little bit too dark. And you always want the subject, which is in focus, to be the brightest one in the image. Brighten up the whites maybe a little bit. Bring down some blacks so we don't lose too much contrast. Actually, what I would do is bring back the exposure here, because I don't really like to bring down the highlights and the shadows on the opposite side, because you lose a lot of contrast if you do that, as you can see here. So I like to leave it like that. And we're gonna get rid of those highlights in the background later on. Alright, this looks pretty decent. I would add some vibrancy here because it's pretty flat. So let's do 20, saturation maybe a little bit. And this really depends on how you wanna or what look you wanna go for. Now I would change or switch into the color or curves tab. So let's start with the general curve here. Usually I would go for an S curve. Let's say I had some photos already in mind. Alright, let me pull this photo in here. So this is a photo from with Luke. I really like this one and I want to go with this mood. I think this fits really well or would fit really well, and this is achievable with this image we got here. Check out with Luke, he's a really great photographer. It's actually here with Luke. You can see it down in the bottom of the image. So let's try to get the same feeling as this image on the left side. We can tone this. He has a lot of contrast here, so I'm gonna pull down the shadows and also bringing up the highlights to add some dramatic contrast here, and also maybe bring up the whites a little bit. Actually he softened his whites, so I'm gonna bring it down like that. And this is just a play around with the curve. Sometimes you gotta go back and go forward all the time. As you can see, he has faded blacks here, so I'm gonna pull the blacks up so I get that faded look here, as you can see in the shadows, just like him. Just trying to get this image to where he is. And let's analyze this image. We can play with the HSL color tab. Usually I have it like that, but for a better overview I'm gonna show it with the panels open like that. As you can see, the greens are pretty desaturated and there are almost no yellows in here, so I'm gonna pull the yellows into the green side here and turning down the greens in saturation, and also bringing down the luminance of the greens, which means the brightness of the greens, making it a little bit moodier. Also bringing down the yellows because we had some yellows down here, so playing around with the yellows, and as you can see we are getting there. Maybe playing with the greens a little bit just to see where he has his green parked. Also bringing down the yellows again. And for luminance, you can also bring up the luminance in orange tones, so the skin tones or your subject gets a little bit brighter if you have a subject or a human subject. Actually, as you can see, you can just bring back some details here, making him a little bit brighter. Also, he doesn't have too many blues in the background like here. Since we have some teals in the background, I'm gonna bring those teals into a more blue tone look like that, and also bring down the saturation from aqua and blue just like that. He doesn't have too much blues, but his blues are still leaning towards teals a little bit, just like that. And also he has a more moody look, so we can actually bring down the exposure here, maybe just like that, and also play around with the shadows a little bit. Yeah, my battery just ran out, so we're back on track. So we're just here almost having the same tones. He has a lot of grain, as you can see here, so let's jump down to the effects tab and add some grain. And I wouldn't overdo it, but I think he has like something like that. You can also increase the size of it. You go up or go down. I think he has pretty much like something like that, maybe a little bit more roughness before and after. And he also have a vignetting, so we can add a vignette here just a little bit, just like that. -7 is pretty good, or minus, let's say -9. Alright, we're pretty much almost there. Just adding the lens correction here. Sometimes bring down or back the vignetting. Also, let's jump into the detail tab here. I know I'm jumping around here, guys, but I just try to get the main look here, so we can get pretty much the same as he has here. So I'm gonna sharpen this, and as you can see, if I move around this slider, you cannot see any changes. So hold down all the option on the Mac, so you can see the mask and what it's gonna sharpening. You don't want the whole image to be sharpened. You only want to sharpen the object or subject you have. Usually I don't overdo it. Maybe this is a little bit too much grain. Let's jump back real quick and decrease the roughness maybe a little bit, and also the amount. I think this is pretty okay. And let's jump back to detail and adjust our sharpening. If I go up, you can see this is a lot of sharpening, so I usually don't over sharpen it. I just leave it around there. This is pretty much okay. Yeah, we do have some grain here. Alright, this is good. This is a good base. Let's jump right into color grading and stuff. So what you can do is giving those mid-tones more warmth, which is his skin tone actually. So let's see. And also adding some luminance, making his skin tones a little bit brighter. Also jump back. I want to fix those skin tones kinda because he has some redness down here, so I try to get rid of that a little bit. I think we also have some greens, but let's see. It's not that easy to fix in Lightroom, but I think this is not bad. Also, if he has some greens, you can actually go up here, adjusting the tint. This looks pretty okay. So we're pretty much almost moody as his look. To remove this pole here, you can easily remove this using the spot removal tool here inside of Lightroom. And it's just like the Photoshop tool, so you can actually clone or heal. So I would take clone, and then you just have to brush over, brush over like that. And it's gonna clone something from close by, and if you don't like it, you can adjust it like that. And yeah, it's kind of gone. I don't really like this one, so gotta feather it out a little bit. Yeah, this looks better, more seamless. Maybe a little bit more from this side. No, this is not good, so I'm bringing it back. Yeah, this looks good. No one is gonna notice this little thing here. Anyway, you gotta crop this for Instagram, so just do a 4x5 here for this one, just like that. Jump back to reference view. I don't see any other colors in the shadows actually. It's all desaturated. You can usually use the color grading tool to add some blues into the shadows, for example, making those greens a little bit blue. And also highlights, but I think the highlights are pretty fine. Usually I would add some warmth, but for those highlights here, maybe adding some coolness, just like that. And so we want to get rid of those highlights here, getting some details back, so we can use the gradient tool. This is over here, gradient filter. Pull down a gradient filter like that. And if you hover over, you can see what area is gonna be affected. I'm gonna pull it down like that. You can also press O usually, yes, O on the keyboard, and you can see the same. Let's reset the exposure here and try to bring down the highlights and maybe some exposure. And as you can see, he also gets affected, so I'm using a brush here on this side. And then I can actually exclude him from the gradient filter. I'm just gonna do it roughly, guys, so you get the gist of it. All right, let's see. Still have some body parts in here. All right, I think this is pretty much okay. We just got rid of those details in the back. You can also actually put on a range mask for luminance, so you can only get the bright parts here automatically, and you can also brush in again so you don't get that weird halo vignette. Just paint in here again, and then you can play around with the shadows also, getting back some shadows. You can also make the sky more bluish, just like that if you more into that. So I'm gonna drop it a little bit. Also taking down contrast, etc. Can play around a lot with it. So I would go for something like that. And the next thing I would do is go to an adjustment brush or radial filter. Usually you can use a radial filter here and drag a radius around your subject like that, like so. Bring down the exposure again, reset everything, and usually I like to feather it out pretty much. So I'm gonna bring it up a little bit to his face. Now you can actually disable the mask and then bring down the exposure a little bit around him, making a vignette. Also highlights, making the shadows a little bit darker if you want to. I would leave it like that. Those are pretty dark already. Just like that. Bringing back contrast also helps a little bit from the background, so you get the most contrast out of your subject here. So you can also toggle between before and after with this little button here. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Let's see before and after. Just like that. I actually don't even know how to make before and afters in the German version, so I'm gonna leave the real canvas and make it before and after, just like that. And I mean, this does a lot to the image already, and only these settings already made your image pop out, as you can see. Pretty easy, and you can save it as a preset then afterwards if you want to. Just go to this plus icon, create preset, choose your folder, and then you can just title your preset and say what you want to have in the preset or what settings it should apply to your next image. Alright, so if you have images with the same settings, I mean shooting settings, you can actually just pick this one and choose the other one with Control or Shift, doesn't matter. Shift if you want to have multiple images in a row, or if you want to skip one, just hold Control or Command and you can just go like that. So I'm gonna choose this one and press on sync, take everything, actually enable this panel here, and as you can see, this is the preset or the settings it just applied on this image. Usually I apply a preset and then I'm gonna adjust the white balance once again from start, because white balance is not almost the same. Also the whole basic panel here, usually I'm just playing around trying to get those right from image to image, and also be careful about radial and gradient filters because those are also applied here, so don't forget to rearrange them. Alright, this is pretty much good, I think. Not a bad basic panel to start with, and then you can again adding some gradients here, reset the exposure, bring down the exposure a little bit, also shadows to make the viewer's eye go directly to the subject. Also here can do the same here, just like that, before and after of those edits or settings. Can also add a range mask once again, because my head is maybe in the way. Just like that. This is not bad. Before and after. Alright, let's do a maybe more complicated look. So let's try to edit this image almost like I have on Instagram. I actually color graded it using Photoshop, but let's try to do it in here in Lightroom only. First of all, let's do the basics. Well, to be honest, I already adjusted the basics here in this image, so this is also a TIFF file. So let's start with only HSL and color here. Also adjusting some contrast, just like that, and trying to get those tones here. So I had blue grass going on, or orange grass, So we have a lot of yellows here. These are yellows and not really greens. And I play around, just have a little bit of greens and a lot of yellows. So let's try to push those into green. Also push the greens into blue. And we are all limited here already, as you can see. So what we can do is actually start with an adjustment brush and brushing around here. Press O so you can see where you're brushing. Also turn back the flow to 100 and paint around here where you have greens. And I'm gonna adjust this in a minute, don't worry. So we can change the range mask to color and then just pick a color, and I want to have the greens. So you can adjust the amount here. Alright, this is not bad. And now we can actually, adjust the hue here and easily get those blues or teals, just as I did in Photoshop. Can also play around with the amount here if you think you didn't grab all the greens, just like that. Also had to get rid of the exposure, so this is what it looks like now. You can play around, you can also get those oranges, just like that. But I had it somewhere around here. This is not too bad. And also you can actually turn down the exposure a little bit, making it darker, so I stand out a little bit more, and this is not a bad way to do it. So pretty fast done here. Also you can adjust the sky now using the blues, bending it towards teals, not too much. I don't want to have it like that. Maybe somewhere here is good, and maybe play around with some aquas here. Bring down the saturation maybe, or bring it up. I might bring it down a little bit. Also bring down the luminance here, and also play around with the greens. Also with the yellows here. And yeah, this is not too bad. As you can see, you can still play around here. Also turning those greens into more yellows, just a tad like that. And now you can play with the saturation if you want to have it more or less here, more colors, less colors, whatever. So yeah, that's pretty easy. Let's see before and after, pretty dramatic change. Also you can add some shadows here, some blues, just a little bit, making me a little bit brighter here, using the luminance tool, also adding some warmth. And the highlights are pretty good, I think, maybe a little bit, just like that. And then again, sharpening, just pull up the amount, about 40 is good. Let's type it in, mask me out like that. Also go up with the details, this is not bad. Usually you can also pick your frame here using this little icon, and then usually I would have it on the eye, because this should be the most sharpened area in your image on a portrait photo. So yeah, if you want to go overboard, you can also play around with the tone curves. I usually do. So let's do a basic tone curve here, which usually looks good. Before and after. Maybe we have too much of reds here in my t-shirt, so bring it up a little bit, just like that. Also, if you don't want to have that faded look, you can just pull down the shadows here. Also, you can mess around with the calibration tool, which I also like, to make them colors pop, but you have to be careful with the skin tones, because if you play around with it, you get pretty strange skin tones. If you play too much with it, I would actually go for something like this. As you can see, the colors are popping. This panel actually adds colors to every channel, so it's not like the HSL color, it's like a little bit different. It's gonna add like blues to every channel, but this is kind of hard to explain. But just play around with it, and then you know how to use it correctly. But it's very powerful, I really like to use it. Maybe I will do another video explaining or trying to explain that. It's not easy at all. So yeah, This is before and after, pretty a dramatic change I would say, and pretty fast. Alright, let's do one more, and this is differently from the other ones. So let's just leave the canvas here and again close this tab here. As you can see, it's pretty bright back there and it's kind of dark in the front. So I'm gonna raise up the shadows here so I can see myself, and then bring down the highlights a little bit, getting back those skies here. We don't have a lot of details in the sky because it was a blue sky without any clouds or so. This is the vignetting of the Varial ND filter actually, so in photos you will probably see that, in wide angle photos especially. Let's try to get this image right. Turning down some blacks, getting some contrast back, also adding some warmth because this was golden hour, so I want to get it back where it was. It was not really golden hour, but it was almost golden hour. Adding some vibrancy here because you lose a lot of vibrance shooting in RAW with your camera, so I also like to add vibrance, or if you want to go for a moody look, you can actually decrease the vibrance so you get less colors in the whole image. Next is the tone curve. I usually mess around with this a lot, so don't forget to adjust your tone curves. It's very important. So usually I get a classic S curve. You can also go with the inverted S curve if you have your image too dark or so and want to brighten it up. So that would look something like that. But you lose a lot of contrast here in this one, so I think this is the way to go for this image. Then I will go to the HSL color tab, playing around with colors. I wouldn't like touch reds and orange too much because reds are in the skin tone, as you can see there. I'm getting red, and also orange I'm getting red or green like Hulk or so. So I would start playing around with yellows here because we got a lot of yellows there, so can go either green or more orange, so I would lean towards orange. Also playing around with yellows here in the saturation. I would actually add some yellows. I wouldn't go too vibrant with this image. I think I would leave those stones kind of pretty dark or with not a lot of colors, so let's see what we can do. Also greens back here, I don't like to have those greens, so let's put it back here. Also playing around with aqua, let's see where we have some aqua. We only have some blues in the tank top and the top here, actually the sky, so I want to have some teal skies looking a little bit better matching this image. And now you can play around with greens. I actually like the vibrance back here in the background. I wouldn't go too ham with the blues here. Also with the aqua, let it where it is. Then actually add some orange tones. Can also see how I get brighter a little bit. Playing around with yellows. Maybe pull it down. This is too much otherwise. I actually like that glow here, so I'm gonna raise the greens. And yeah, it's always playing around here in Lightroom. As you can see, there's no right or wrong, so just play around and try to get the look you want to go for. Sometimes you find other ways to do it and nice looks. So yeah, adding some blues here in the shadows. Also playing around with the luminance. This was kind of too dark, so I'm gonna raise it up just like that. Can see before and after by clicking this icon here. I really like those blue tones here, so it complements the background a little bit. Also adding some luminance here in the mid-tones helps really much, I think. Maybe adding some warmth here. And in the skies, usually I like to have it warm. Or in the highlights. Details, again, masking me out here, or trying the best to mask me out. Adding some details and a lens correction so we don't get that weird vignetting, which I actually liked, so I'm gonna get the vignette back. Adding some vignette. Let's see what we've done so far. bringing that image to another level. As you can see, you get a lot of vibrance, getting the image back where it should be. Playing around with the yellows here again, maybe. No, this is too much. So we can also, again, adding a nice curve here, adding some blues here in the shadows actually. Bring it back like that, and also mess around with the greens. You can also mess around with the yellows and other channels. I just like to do it like this, pretty basic. Then play around with this calibration tab, again getting those colors back. And you can easily create that orange and tea colors, so I wouldn't overdo this, but as you can see, you can make those colors pop really much only using this slider here, or these 3 sliders, actually this tab, just like that. And if you wanted to have it a certain way but it's getting too orange or too red, you can adjust it here, actually just like that. And I would take down the saturation just a little bit. Yeah, this is not bad. Also adding a radio filter once again, so you can separate yourself here from the whole background using a high feather, just like that. And now bringing the exposure down as much as you want. I just want to have it like that. Bring down the contrast maybe, and this looks not that bad. Let's reset it. Before and after. So pretty easy ways to enhance your images. I would actually, sorry guys, I gotta get rid of that vignetting here, doesn't look too good. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I only left one image out, but you can actually download my preset, which is for free for the holy cow, like that. Also have other presets going on. Oh, it's actually this one. Yeah, you can actually download this one. I'm gonna upload all the images and link them in this description below, so you can download and follow along with the whole processing here. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. We just edited like 4 images. This one is also not edited, but this is pretty much the same setup like this one. So let's try to sync it, see how it looks like. Yeah, kinda. You can also use the holy cow here, a funny name here. So, and then you can just adjust everything for your needings, making the shadows a little bit brighter here. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. Get back to the library and get an overview of the images here. So these were the images we just edited. I hope you enjoyed this one, and let me know if you struggle somewhere, and if you have any further questions, just let me know in the comments, and I hopefully will catch you in the next video. Peace out.